look, Aisha, as a franchise expert, I'd like to kind of turn this interview or turn this podcast into towards emerging franchisors specifically. And since you've seen good, bad, and ugly, since you have your students coming in representing those brands, can you share, in your opinion, what are some of the key factors that contribute to an emerging franchise brand success?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously it starts with selecting the right franchisee.
Sure.
And because of our existence, it doesn't have to be someone that already has that business acumen, but it's someone that understands that this is not going to be, for the most part, an absentee business. Like, you have to be part of the business, and you have to understand, get the knowledge to understand the numbers and what it takes to be able to be successful. So that's number one. Number two is, that ops manual and training materials and job aids, all the resources and structures that you can give your franchisees for them to be able to implement and train the brand to new people, especially with turnover. Depending on what industry you're in, turnover could be anywhere between 50% and 150%. Franchisees and their leaders need the tools to be able to train the new people coming in as efficiently as possible, so that they don't have the waste of labor that takes whenever you have to have new people, bring people in. Another one is be able to provide franchisees with the clarity of the financial model. So, sometimes franchisors, especially in the item 19, they say, oh yeah, so here's the average P&L. But what does it mean? If you get this labor cost, how do you get to that labor cost? Like, what's the positions and how many, and when do you bring more people? That level of specificity, because every model is different. How
Sure.
you staff a pizza store versus, a gym is different. And so that, I think, bringing clarity of model so that they know what they're implementing and following up. And so the franchisors, the emerging franchisors that are more successful, and we have a lot of clients from a lot of those brands, the more that they have taken the time on giving those resources to their franchisees, the better that they do,
Sure.
And then I think that's probably one of the things. If you're in food service, please give your franchisees the ability to know what the ideal cost of goods is for the business. There's
Absolutely.
so many brands that are in food service that do not provide that,
Really?
Frank, and we're doing it for them,
Wow.
And so, yeah, so that's what I would say.
And I think about on the emerging franchise side specifically, how franchisors that don't ask for the financials from their franchisees, you've got to know how they're measuring up to their fellow franchisees in the network, so you can help grow their margins.
Absolutely.
If you're not asking for the financials, you're just, you're throwing darts, at a wall, hoping that they hit it right. And that's no way to run a business.
Not only asking for the financials, but then sharing the aggregates.
Yes.
Right?
Doing something with it.
Yeah, they're sharing that back, because I do know there are several emerging brands that do ask for it, but the franchisees don't hear back at all. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, if you're not collecting your P&Ls, start collecting them and let the franchisees know that they're going to get the aggregate, so that they have a prototype to compare their financial numbers against. And I promise you that most franchisees will be happy to do that, as long as you actually share back, so that they have a model to compare where they're at, and that way they can work on the things that they see that they're different.
Yeah.
Franchisees love that, by the way, to get those numbers.
Sure.
And it will be beneficial for the franchisor, because otherwise, how does a franchisor make a decision based on, for favorable unit economics if you don't have that information?
Sure. When I was starting out, my attorney had said, this is kind of in tongue in cheek, that don't even bother collecting the financials from your franchisees if you're not going to do anything with it, because you're just frustrating with people. And even kind of taking it a step further, where another huge development in my experience, was sharing their peer numbers in like a network scorecard. And I was the one in my company I was kind of holding back a little bit. I was afraid that the franchisees towards the bottom were going to, be embarrassed and obviously not have their name and numbers be out there for the entire network to see. But my team convinced me, no, this is the right thing to do. And having a complete network scorecard and having all the franchisees share all of the numbers. And actually the transparency of that, number one, the bottom franchisees had hope because they saw what other franchisees in the network were doing. And now suddenly they saw what was truly possible. So that was, first of all, that was a blessing in disguise. And secondly, if somebody was towards the bottom of the network scorecard and they were known as a complainer, the other franchisees really didn't take their complaints, to heart so much. They didn't have the clout that they had until their numbers were shown. So all in all, it was the right thing to do. But I think number one, the biggest learning lesson is collect the financials and do something with it. Don't just collect it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it gives so much to the franchisees. It gives them a roadmap,
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. It's a huge, important best practice.
Talking more about the emerging franchisor specifically, that statistic that 84% of all brands never get to 100 units. I know there's many reasons why, but what's, in your opinion, what do you think, Aicha? Why do you think 84% don't get to 100 units?
Yeah, a great question. Sometimes franchisees, our clients come to us when they're starting to think about going multi-brand. And one of my first questions that I have for them, okay, you want to do that for financial reasons or ego reasons? Because the answer will be different. I mean, it's fine if it's ego, but just know that you're going to make less money. And if it's financial, then let's really talk about the numbers, because this might not be the right time. And so I think for franchisors, people that, the emerging ones, the ones that are starting, are you doing these based on ego, or are you doing these based on money, right? And because sometimes our ego takes over and doesn't allow us to make the right financial decisions. And when you are an emerging franchisor, you absolutely need to really look at your financial side 10 times more than your ego side, right?
Right.
Okay, you want to grow and you want to expand, great. But literally, there's a certain number of units, and depending what model you have and what industry you're in, the number might be different, right?
True.
So, that what do you call it? Royalty sustainability is different. I mean, they say it's 100, but it could be 75, it could be 50, whatever number it is. You need to get to that number as quickly as possible, as efficient as possible, and you need to be doing it as profitable as possible, the very systematic approach. And if you don't have that discipline, that's what's going to have you not get there. I know a franchisor that was expanding, and they were based out of Michigan, and they opened 1 unit in Atlanta. One.
Whoa.
That franchisee failed because the cost of the product itself was 30% more than it cost the franchisees, in Michigan. So the unit economics did not work.
Sure.
So here we are growing and expanding because somebody decided to ask for a unit, and now that brand suffered because of the closure, right? And so you really have to be very careful as to how you're doing it. And for a franchisor, I don't think there's an option. You have to do it very strategic and numbers minded, so that you can actually do it effectively. So I think that's really key when it comes to emerging franchise. So if you have a brand that is proven, that the model in the right place has shown that is profitable and does the unit economics work, then expand that way. I've worked in global brands that, I mean, even when we had thousands of units, we still had 2 or 3 markets we worked on and focused on when we came to development. We did not just do 50 states, right?
Right.
And so why would somebody that only has 7 units be looking at 5 states? It makes no sense. So number sense. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. If you prove in a brand, then there are other reasons why you're failing.
Yeah. And these founders now more so than ever are looking to private equity as the savior.
Yes. And they're losing so much of what they work for, right?
Yeah.
And,
what are your thoughts on the influx of private equity being involved in brands really earlier and earlier now, in some cases from the inception of the brand? What have you seen?
It's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, I get it that the access to cash is good, but if you are needing that access to cash, it's because you have not really taken the decisions that you needed financially to grow and expand your business. I think that is
Yes.
proven. How did McDonald's grow? How did Domino's grow? How did Wendy's grow? I mean, they didn't have private equity,
Right.
they just grew. I mean, and Tom Monahan was there until 1999. I grew up with the man running, Domino's,
Mhm.
and he grew through franchising, but he was smart. He was carefully. He was financially sound. You can do it that way. So if you need the private equity money, that for me, that's already like a red flag in my mind.
Mhm.
Or maybe it is that you want to go as fast as you can, and you're willing to give up part of your business. Then if it's an open eye choice, okay, got it. Personally, I just like, control. And so I'd rather go slow and careful than to give up part of what I worked for so hard to create. That's what that's my comments on that, I would say.
Yeah.
And I mean, access to cash, sometimes it could be more expensive than you get it somewhere else. So, I mean, it's not for everyone, but some people might decide it's good for them, and if it's good for them because their goals are different, then that's great. But I would tell you something else though. And this is something because I have experienced brands that have gone, public or been bought by other people. And something gets lost when it comes to the culture of the organization when an outsider comes in, whether takes over or now is influencing decisions. And the entire organization feels it. Okay. And so if you are going to bring private equity, you're going to have to fight to be able to get that culture that you created that made the brand what it is, what it became, right? Because the brand is not all about the product and the service they provide, but it's also the spirit that comes behind it from the founder that really cares and loves about what they do every day, and that really cares and loves about their people and what the decisions that are being made. And so not that private equity doesn't care, but they're more focused on the money side and the people side and the
Sure.
culture side. And you do lose something behind it. And I've seen it many times, too many times, where that happens. And so it can still be maintained, but then both whoever is taking over or is joining the organization needs to be committed to keep the culture going. And that's what's going to be part of the strength of the brand. I will tell you that Domino's would not be who Domino's is today if they had not been able to very successfully keep the spirit of what Tom Monahan created in the first place.
Yeah.
You're not going to go to a Domino's Pizza Company meeting and not hear the cheer that I grew up with when I was 21 years old. I know it to this day. I tell, and you see it if you follow any Dominoid franchisees and you are in their feed, you will see them in meetings doing the cheer. And that's part of who we were and why the company has now reached over 20,000 units around the world, right? And that is really very important. So that's what I would say about private equity.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.